So far, we've seen a lot with comparing numbers. Let's talk briefly about comparing dates and times and daytimes and timestamps. We can use the operators we've already seen, like less than or greater than or equal to make comparisons. Let's work with our people table. So let's do a select star from people from earlier when I covered dates and date times and times. Let's say that I want to select the people who were born before the year 1999, or how about before 2005? Let's do that. So to do that, I would do a select star or whatever I want to select from people where, and then I can take the birth date column, which is a date, right? It's going to be in this format of 2000 something or whatever the date is. And I'm going to compare that to where it's less than 2005 and then what, January 1st of 2005. And this is a string, right? This is not a date, but it's a string. And most of the time, MySQL can figure out how to compare an actual date to a string that looks like a date. And it does work. We get the two people, Elton and Lulu, who were born before 2005, January 1st, right? So 2000 and 1985. So that does work, but another option that is more foolproof is to first extract the year from birth date, if that's all I care about, right? Year from birth date, and say was the year before 2005. And we get the same two results, but this is a lot more explicit and it has fewer places it could go wrong. This relies on MySQL recognizing this as a date and it being in the correct format. And if I only care about the year, then it's better to extract the year. Again, this will work most of the time, but it's not always guaranteed to work. And in fact, the docs make a note about just this very topic, which I'll show you in a moment. We could also work with times, right? If I wanted to know if somebody was born after 9 in the morning, I could do this, select star from people, where I think we called it birth time, is greater than, and then I would need to have my date string in the correct format, so something like 090000. That would work. And are all these people born after 9 in the morning? I guess so. So let's change it to narrow it down a bit. How about people born after noon, after 12? So these two people, Juan and Hazel. That does work, but again, we're comparing a true time to a string. So if I just want to know if they were born after 12 o'clock, I could do a similar approach where I say the hour portion of birth time, remember we saw all these time functions and date functions, that's going to give me a number. It's going to extract the hour, and then I can compare that to 9 or 12 or whatever we said. And we get the same too. And there is one more option that I'm going to show you. There is a function built into MySQL called cast. Cast helps us convert one data type to another. So I could cast a string into an actual date, for example, or cast a date time into a date and things like that. So the format is that we cast some value as some type. So I would do something like this. Select cast. Let's take the string 090000. Oh, I hit enter too soon. All right, let's try that again. Let's take the string 090000 and cast that as a time. Because this is a piece of text, it is not truly a time. It could just as well be hello world in those quotes. But here we're telling MySQL we want it to be turned into a time. And it's not going to look any different when it's printed out. Although I suppose it might look different if I did something like this, right? I don't have that leading 0. Well, it can figure out that we should have it and it formats it into the correct time. I know it's confusing because it looks pretty much the same, but as far as MySQL knows, this is a piece of text. Now we've told it it's a time. And so what we get back from this cast is a time. So the reason I bring this up is we can use this when we're making comparisons. The docs recommend that you do this when you're working with between. If I wanted to find people who were born in the afternoon, so people who were born between, let's just do select star from people, between 12 o'clock and, I don't know, 4 o'clock. Or if we use 24-hour time, what is that? From 12 to 16. So select star from people. And I could do where, and then birth time between. And then I have my first hour would be 12 o'clock. And then 16 o'clock, like that. And it works. We find the one person, Hazel, who was born at 14:58:29. So this does work. It's one of those things where it's almost always going to work thanks to MySQL figuring out what we want. But the technically correct way of doing this is to turn these strings into times. And we can do that using cast. So we can cast, and I think I'm actually going to do this in my editor just so you can see it all and not have it wrapped around on a line and getting cut off. So we would do cast this time as an actual time, right? Because this is not a time data type, it's text, it's a string. And then we'll say and cast, what was our other time? 16 o'clock, I think, as a time. Now this is going to seem like a lot of work for something that already was working with fewer characters, and that is true. I'm just being thorough here, but we'll get the same result. And if all we actually cared about was the hours portion, then what I think is easiest is to just extract the hour portion from birth time and then compare that to a number. I don't have to write these long date or time strings. I could just do what we did earlier. Select star from people where birth time is between, and instead of all of birth time, I want the hour portion of birth time. That gives me a number. And where is that between 12 and 16? So I think this is simpler. But if you needed to have, 12, 31, and 30 seconds, then this syntax would work great because you can be way more precise with your times and minutes and seconds. It's not just limited to one aspect. But anyway, let's run this and just make sure that works too. And we get the same result. So there's a lot of comparisons we can do with dates, times, date times, timestamps. I didn't even show date times and timestamps. But in general, what I always recommend is make the simplest comparison that you can. Do you need to care about seconds and minutes, or even if you have a date time, do you care about the time portion or just the date portion? If I wanted to know if somebody was born before this date, well, this is a date time, but I could just compare to the date portion. I don't really care about the time unless I need something that detailed. I need to know about the time as well. So we can cast, as we saw. You're not going to notice a difference most of the time because MySQL can figure out that when we don't cast this to a time, it can tell that this conforms to the time syntax, the correct format, and birth time is a time, and it compares them for us. But this is the technically correct version, and it's what the docs recommend you do.